Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Tom.
My name is James. That was weird.
Do you reckon, James, anyone could tell initially that there was different tones to the dulcet Sudge's voice that we used to hear?
Dulcet. You've got that wrong. We should probably fill people in quite quickly. No, you are still listening to Planet FPL. Sudge is on holiday. I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Campbell at TC on Twitter, who's demanded and adamant that he wants to host the podcast.
Right. That's right. I'm coming for you, Sudge. I'm coming for you.
You can stay, mate. Before you do, tell the people who you are, Tom.
Yeah, man. I just want to say, first of all, James, it's great. I mean, this has been threatened for a long time, hasn't it? We've wanted to get me on the podcast.
Always going to be you if Sudge was away. It's true.
Yeah, and I guess it's just a reflection on how hard you guys work. That he just hasn't been away. And I've been chomping at the bit. So yeah, my name's Tom. Tom Campbell. I'm on Twitter at utterlytc, and hopefully a lot of the guys listening will know me already. I've hosted a couple of quizzes for you in the past on Patreon, and when you did the charity live stream, which was
and our Christmas quiz.
Oh yeah, of course, did that as well. So I've been stressing you out with questions like that in the past, and there'll be a few other questions.
Stress me out some more, are you?
Yeah, this week it's not going to be an easy ride for you. So yeah, that's me. I've been playing fantasy for years and years and years. Didn't play last year, as you know, James. So back playing this year. And that's given, we were just talking offline or before recording, and it's given me a different stance on when you have a crap game week, of which I have had many. It just sort of hasn't mattered that much compared to in the past, because actually playing this ridiculous game I'm here to tell you, it's better to be playing than not. So yeah, that's me.
Good. Where are you at rank wise, Tom?
So I'm around about 150k. So, no great shakes there, but not terrible. It's a season of like comparative respectability. I think, I'm pretty active on Twitter. So I've seen lots of people having phenomenal seasons who are really, active in the community, and, good on them and stuff. But look, I've had way worse seasons in the past as well. And there's still 8 game weeks to go, and we know lots of fixtures. So it'd be naive to just think, well, I'll just keep getting going up getting better and better, because it doesn't always go that way. But there's still opportunities to get better. So yeah, not too bad. Not too bad this season.
What are you left with, chips, Tom?
So I've just got the bench boost left. Okay. So I've been quite not frivolous. They've all been well planned. I haven't just been chucked in because I haven't thought about it. That's not my style at all. But got the bench boost remaining, which is intended to use. I'll use in the the big double game week I think it's double game week 36 is what we're expecting, I believe.
Yeah.
That's the plan for that. So the idea is to use transfers up to and including that week to try and give myself the best chance of a deep bench for that game week. But yeah, just the one chip remaining. How about you?
I've got the majority of them left, but I think it's worth touching on yours a little bit, because there'll be plenty of people in your situation at the moment who are debating sort of bench boost 33 versus bench boost 36.
Yeah, it's close.
Or free hit 33, free hit 36. So you have considered going bench boost 33, presumably.
Definitely. Just the way that my squad set up, I don't think it will because we're so close to 33 now, right? I don't think it will quite allow me enough without taking hits, which I'm not averse to. Like, I'm relatively comfortable taking hits, and I have been throughout the course of the season. But I actually think just through natural transfers, without necessarily needing to take a hit, I'll get to a better place for 36 personally. Okay. But obviously, it's all going to be completely dependent on how you're set up, going into this international break and stuff. So I think there's a compelling case for either. I just think it'll be how deep you can get your bench prior to 33 versus 36.
Yeah, one of the questions I keep getting is what's better, and you've summed it up perfectly. I think it's dependent on what you've got. So my intention going back to sort of game week 27, 28 was when I first did the Chip Talk pod in terms of predicting game week 33 was I'm definitely going to free hit 33. 33 now looks better for me personally, with Southampton having a double than I thought it would look. And now I'm still thinking less and less about free hitting 33, because through no intention, I've ended up now with, say, a couple of Newcastle players, for example.
Oh, I'm right there with you, man. Yeah.
They've got a double in 33, which looks fantastic.
Yeah.
There's a case for having Leicester players, I think, afterwards, in terms of just naturally going there rather than necessarily free hitting them.
Interesting team, right? and in terms of how they've sort of come back onto the radar comparatively recently, and like Wes Fofana being back,
well, that's
some
it.
form.
It's really muddied the waters with Leicester in the sense that we probably could have done with these doubles for them being back in the 20s game weeks, because now you've got Fofana back fit, Evans back fit, Castagna back fit, Justin back fit, and actually we wanted them scraping the barrel, so we knew that which defensive assets, for example, were going to play, not that. But there's a case in itself going, why are you considering Leicester defensive? I think that
is such an that for me, James, is such an interesting topic, because I think as fixture fans, right, and you count yourself in there with Mr. Krellin and lots of other folks, I think the temptation to fixate on these doubles, and I count myself in it as well. I do sometimes think that actually just watching those teams in the lead up and actually saying, is this a team I want to devote any? I think it may be slightly different on a free hit, but is it a team that you want to devote much attention to based on how, as a team, they are playing? And I don't think we as fantasy managers necessarily always allow ourselves that observation as a fan to say, is this team crap, or is it actually coming out of the woods a little bit? And so yes and no with that. Like it would have been better in terms of the smaller pool of players to pick from, but would they have been, shite at the back at that point?
Yeah.
Difficult
Absolutely one. Well, I mean, you've got that now going into this week, haven't you, with Burnley and Everton?
You do.
Where the doubles there, and I think the obvious one is for have you got Jimenez, Tom?
No, I don't.
No.
So I free hitted in the last game week. So Tom from who got the assist came down to Bristol. And,
I saw, yeah,
and
went well, didn't it?
It was car crash stuff, but actually. Do you know what? Like I was lamenting things throughout the evening, and he and I were getting progressively more and more drunk. But I was on a free hit, so it was actually, it ended up being a really good game week for me. But kind of after Tom had gone back home, so it was kind of. And I didn't go for Jimenez, and I easily could have done. It was really close as to who to select from. But no, he's not in my team, and I feel sorry for people who were. Although it's given you a kind of. A decision point there in terms of which of the doublers do you
well, yeah. Well, I think the reason I mentioned him specifically because I think that is a fairly obvious one to look at Weghorst if you're with Architz and go, okay, yes, it's double 31, Norwich 32, double 33. We think possibly double 34 as well. And you look at that and go, yeah, do you know what? Jimenez to Weghorst.
Watford and Villa, I think, as well, in there as well for Burnley as well. Their run is just...
They've got Watford in 35 as well, Villa 36. So if the double didn't happen in 34 and it happens somewhere else, that's not a problem. I mean, there is a case to hold on to someone like Weghorst for those without the chips right till the end of the season.
It's been a dearth up front as well, hasn't it?
Exactly that. So you might as well get one and just leave it.
It's exactly. So I'm going to contradict myself here because you talk about the team, and no one in their right mind would describe Burnley as an attacking unit, right? An attacking side, but they do play with forward, and they're still alive, aren't they? It's not like they're dead and buried. I thought it's obviously looking pretty dire, but they're going to need to win games now. It's not, draws aren't going to be enough now. So I do think, again, the football psychology bit comes in. There's got to come a point where they throw caution to the wind a bit more. And Tom and I were chatting about that. And actually, I guess the same applies to Everton to some extent as well. But from a Burnley perspective, it's imperative that they win games now. So yeah, Weghorst looks a pretty compelling option, doesn't he?
But for him and his owners, for everybody else, not so much.
Yeah.
And that's it, isn't it? The idea, I think you look at it, go, Burnley, Everton, do I really want to be involved in that in terms of my transfers this week? Yeah. No, I probably don't. Like, I've landed on Weghorst, but would I be rushing to get him in if I didn't? No, but if I had Jimenez, then it's an obvious gateway to go that way. But
I mean, the Everton side, James, as well, sorry to cut across you there, but the Everton side, I mean, you're talking about just viewing football from forget fantasy for a moment. That reaction from Lampard after the FA Cup humiliation against Palace, that worried me as someone who's watched football for like 30 years, to see the manager lambast his players so publicly and use the language that he did, that I'm sure all the listeners have heard and stuff. I do wonder whether or not that's going to have the reaction he kind of wants. I doubt it personally. Whereas, the Dyche unit there is more solid, isn't it? And more
certainly in terms of togetherness, if Burnley turn up properly, then there's every chance they'll beat Everton. But obviously, Jack and Sean are on our Clash of the Correspondents, our Burnley and Everton correspondents on Tuesday. I don't think they're going to be tipping up many assets for people to buy, because both sides exactly that are poor at the moment, and you're only looking at them because it's a double game week.
Yeah, which shouldn't be
the
discounted.
Psychology of FPL,
right?
And
it shouldn't. Don't get me wrong. Like it's 2 bites of the cherry. You get players who you're confident, injury notwithstanding, red card, whatever, that you're confident they will play twice. It's just that probability. I do get it, and I would never steer people away. But I sometimes wonder, we who are engaged in the game, whether or not we don't give enough attention to, do we actually trust the teams to deliver? And personally, I don't think I do. I think I just say they're playing twice. I want a piece of that.
I get blinded by it as well.
Yeah. But so I went to watch Watford away at Southampton, James, as a random away trip. My friends and I just happened to, COVID's restrictions have gone for the time being, right? And we just I want to go and watch a Premier League game from Bristol. It's like, local options aren't many. So we just chose that as a random game to go to. And it's really entertaining, but the standard was terrible. Like, for actually having watched that game, you see the results, you're like, okay, maybe Watford scoring twice away. It's like, no, there were 2 defensive howlers. They're just terrible goals to concede. Southampton weren't any great shakes either. So I think actually, if you can find the time to watch games, it does give you that additional context as to whether or not you want to invest in these teams. And I appreciate some people haven't got the time to watch that, but goodness me, I'm a stats guy, as you know, but there's no substitute for actually what your eyes tell you.
To go back to say, even to bring Watford into the conversation, I was having a call with some of our advanced tier patrons on Friday, and we was having a good laugh about the fact that a few of them have still got the likes of Josh King and Emmanuel Dennis and stuff. And ironically, Cucho seems to be the only one suddenly that's now scoring. Where Joe Amrabat, FPO, who's a Watford fan as well, he's got João Pedro. So many of the guys have still got a Watford forward, and I'm saying to them, keep them.
Yeah.
And part of keeping them is, what are you going to? Actually, if you can be bothered to look beyond the Burnley Everton double, Watford's fixtures in 32 and 33 are Leeds at home and Brentford at home.
Yeah.
They're okay.
I know. And forwards are a difficult one, aren't they? Because it's not like there is just a wash of tons of options that you'll be like, you're missing out. It's just not the case. Like I mentioned, I was smiling when you mentioned having 2 Newcastle assets, because one of mine's St. Maximin, who's been in my team for, I know, a free hitter too. He wasn't there for that, but I brought him in at the perfect time fixtures wise, and then it's just been a disaster, one thing after another, with like injury and illness and the team playing well and him struggling to get back in and stuff. And you do just end up keeping hold of these guys for like months.
But then if you take, he's another perfect example. So you're probably looking at this week going Tottenham away, okay, tough fixture. Afterwards, Wolves at home, Leicester and Palace at home in a double, Norwich away. And then you sell, and then it's obvious getaway to move towards someone who's got 36 double. So I mean, that's just if you said to me, James, shall I move St. Maximin to Weghorst this week? I'd say no.
No, it won't be the move.
Like if you're without the chips.
Yeah. I agree. And it's I just think that whole topic about fixtures versus the reality of how the team are playing. And I think obviously, like, we're going into game week 31, right? So soon the conversation about beach terms will be used and stuff, but not necessarily even the beach side of it as well. It's more about, I guess, kind of is the beach thing, but seeing Southampton played in that game, in the Watford game, it was quite going through the motions a little bit, and again, do we necessarily factor that in? I'm not sure I do enough, so those things.
Possibly. Southampton's an interesting case because obviously when we returned from the interlull in early February, Southampton were outstanding for a bit, right? I mean, they completely dominated Tottenham at White Hart Lane. They were unlucky to only get a draw at Old Trafford. And you get close, gone sort of 7-8 unbeaten or so, and you're looking at going, they still can't qualify for Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously Southampton's a team are at their best when they play with intensity. So if you take that 10% off them, they'll be short.
And to be fair, they were a little bit under strength. They didn't have Brozier. He was on the bench, came on, and clearly wasn't quite at it and stuff. But they still managed to beat us in the FA Cup, despite us making 9 changes and us going full strength. So yeah, they are a good team. I guess I'm rambling a bit here, but that for you, James, who watches so much football, I do think it gives an edge, which there's a question we've got later about stats which are like quote unquote meaningless. And I think actually for me, there's not a stat that can substitute eye test. There's just not. Like, There's some intangible about they look good.
I'm in agreement with that. We're going to go with an analytics versus grass conversation, are we? But I'm in full support of those who obviously do trust the analytics side of it. I mean, there's not a right and a wrong in terms of analytics versus grass or stats versus non-stats. It's just generally the way I play. We discussed this with Az when me and Suj went on Black Box the other week.
Yeah, great show. Loved it. Suj's answer was terrific.
It wasn't it?
One word, stats? 2 letters. Yeah.
No. Gold. I wouldn't have wanted him to say anything else because if he just started rambling, he would have come across like he doesn't know what he's talking about, which is how he is most of the time anyway.
Bless him. It was a good answer and a great show as well. So
thank you.
I mean, and I am a stats guy, as you know, so I'll use them all the time.
Yeah, you're probably somewhere in the middle, aren't you? Probably.
I'd say, probably leaning stats wise, especially. I kind of fell out of love a little bit with football when fans weren't around, James. I obviously didn't play as well, but it felt to me not sport. Sport to me needs spectators, right, in some form, and I did fall out of love. But it's back now. I'm really enjoying watching games, watching highlights and stuff, and I think that's largely down to fans being around. But yeah, I'd say I come down more on the stats side than not. So look, in terms of the show, so you said I got volunteered to host, so I'm going to do my level best to be a Sudge replacement here.
I'm really excited. This is such an upgrade.
Well, no, we'll see, right? So I mean, you reached out on Twitter and asked for some questions, so we're going to go through those. So thanks to everyone who responded. There's some good ones there, and I've basically come up with 3 topics as well. I call them. I'd say they're more topics than questions. So I think they're a little bit bigger picture. So if we focus on those first and then just run through the questions afterwards, we can go through those specifically depending on how we're doing on time. So the first, and I haven't run these through with James at all.
As you know, Tom, there is no time limit on this.
Yeah. Well, no, it's all good. It's fine. It's Sunday. It's time to get into this. So I think,
we are pre-recording just in case someone gets injured on Sunday night.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. And I haven't shared any of these topics with James as well, because so to the listeners, I've been listening to Planet FPL pretty much since the beginning. I think I picked you guys up in episode 3. I think I missed the first couple, so a long time ago. And
proper devotee.
Yeah, listen for years, right?
Is it improved at all?
Heaps. It's improved. It's improved loads, but it's also kept the I don't know what
stupidity.
No, man, don't put yourself down. The bit that set you guys apart, I think I think I messaged you about it, James, years ago. I was like, it's something that you were talking about Spurs and you were saying Harry will play, and it was like, how do you know that? And it was like, oh, because you're going to the games, you've watched them, and you know he's in. And you're talking about that. I was like, we didn't have that elsewhere, and I'd consume podcasts.
Terrible example, Tom. He always plays.
Yeah, that's true. I think he'd probably broken his leg or something, and you were like, no, he'll be there.
The one I'd always say, isn't it? It's like he's done his ankle, but Arsenal's in 4 weeks.
That's it. He'll be there. Yeah. It probably wasn't a great example, but that's kept. But the whole content that you produce has always kept that format, and I've loved it. But I haven't shared any of these, and the reason for that is I like how you react to questions initially and just off the cuff and see what you think. So the first topic is this season, the battle for 4th, right? Arsenal are in a awesome position, right, in terms of points already on the table, games in hand, who they've got to come, right? So kind of the ball's in their court. To me, the importance of them getting it this season is astronomical. And for me, it's because next season is going to be even harder, right? With the teams that are going to be throwing money at it in terms of the teams that you're expecting. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. If they do achieve it, and I know you're coming at it from a Tottenham side, do you think there's an opportunity there for them to kind of establish themselves as that team in that 4? Or do you think that
why did I invite you on?
Do you know what I mean, though? Because I just feel like next season, if they miss out and it's United, I can't see Arsenal managing to get back in there because the amount of money.
Isn't it the same for all 3 teams in that sense? Arsenal, United, and Tottenham. If we say,
I was thinking like Newcastle in there as well, James, as well. Next season.
Yeah, but I just mean in terms of whichever Arsenal are rightly favourites to obviously take it at the moment. But I don't think it's any less important for United or Tottenham than it is for Arsenal. I mean, if Ten Hag gets the job and United finish 4th, then what you can potentially do in the transfer market, admittedly in United's case, that it definitely attract the players anyway. But I think Arsenal and Tottenham will still might have to go for a younger demographic. Yeah, but they'll still attract the players because of the stadiums and
do you reckon you see it that way? Yeah.
I mean, Tottenham's case, it's probably more restrictive in terms of spending power.
Yeah, agree.
The other two, it feels like Arsenal were probably going to spend fairly big in the summer either way.
Sounds like it, doesn't it? Sounds like they got an opportunity to spend.
Whereas Conte obviously does not want to be restricted in terms of what he wants to do. So I'm not sure it's any more important for Arsenal.
Do you think that their opportunity to Arsenal's opportunity to get fourth next season would be the same if they miss out this season as it would be if they to get it?
I think at the end of the day, it's very much dependent on I always kind of look at 72 points roughly for fourth, a few points shy of sort of 2 points per game.
Yeah.
And the reality is, until the last couple of weeks where Arsenal and Tottenham have stepped up a little bit, it's kind of looked like probably 66, 67 or so would be enough. Whereas now it might even jump up as high towards, I mean, I've seen a few people predicting that Arsenal would end on like 78 or something. I doubt it will be.
Yeah, I doubt.
If they do, then they'll obviously walk away with fourth fairly comfortably. Yeah. So even if you think back to the Leicester Tottenham season in 2016, the reality Leicester won the title with 81 points.
Yeah, mad, isn't it?
Arsenal could. I mean, look at what Liverpool and City are doing now in terms of the standards of what it's got to be to win a Premier League title. So in terms of the race for fourth, it's all about the consistency. If you hit a certain number of points, you'll qualify. It doesn't really matter what anybody else does. The highest total that's never finished top four was Arsenal in 16, 17.
Go on.
Finished 75 points and finished fifth.
Ouch.
Which is really unlucky.
I bet you were gutted.
I was winning 7-1 at Hull at the same time, mate, on the final day. So I obviously wasn't bothered in the slightest. No. We finished on 86 points that season. You know, more than what Leicester got the previous season, and finished second. So it all comes down to consistency. And if you hit a certain number of points, generally you'll finish. So I know what you're saying about Newcastle. And obviously the spending power. Whether that be enough for top four next year, I doubt. But I think
think it's another team where you would struggle to see teams taking like 6 points off them. You know, I just think there's going to be less and less teams taking 6 points. You know, like I think Villa, for example, will spend again already a good team, good young manager in there as well. Another team where you think tough game away from home certainly, and on your own patch, no easy game as well. To Newcastle, we just talked about. I think if we're going to route it back to fantasy just for a moment, I think next season's going to be everyone wants the pool of players to be bigger, right? When you select your team initially, everyone's like gravitate to the same ones. I genuinely believe it's going to be a much bigger pool of players initially at the beginning of next season, because those teams we've just mentioned, take the top three as red, right? Your Liverpool, Man City, and Chelsea will.
Well, we don't know about Chelsea.
It's a good point about Chelsea with the ownership. True, yeah, fair shout. Let's assume they get a buyer and they're okay. Those three, so you're always going to have players from those three teams that you'd think. Man United, I think, are in turmoil. Personally, maybe we can talk about them in a minute, James. But they're still a huge club. You've got Arsenal and Tottenham, as we just talked about there. Newcastle are going to throw scary money at this over the next however long. Villa, I think of that. You're going to laugh at me.
You're not talking about West Ham yet, mate.
West Ham and Everton, I think, are two teams. If Everton survive, the amount of money they've already spent,
Everton are in big trouble for the next few years.
Horrendously at trouble.
They can't afford to go down.
They really, and yet
if they go down, they won't come back.
It was
not for a while anyway.
Huge goal, that Iwobi goal, wasn't it? Really was a big goal. But I mean, it sounds completely farcical to even mention them in the conversation because they've been so bad for so long. But it wouldn't surprise me. But they do still have so many clubs have got financial backing now, haven't they? And in theory, they could be a team which you'd say that's another tough game. So I think it bodes really well from a fantasy perspective. We want to root this back into next season. There being a bigger pool, which makes the game more varied and more exciting. So I don't know.
We mentioned Leicester, right?
Leicester
haven't really been on the table this year. Last 2 years, they should have finished top four and fell away at the end, right?
That's true.
What if they improve and keep hold of their best players, etc.?
It's a good one. I just thought, James, looking at it this season, that fourth spot I think is going to be ultra competitive. In my head, the top three, take your point about Chelsea, are the top three in some order, right? That's how I see it. Maybe that's naive, but I see it as those.
No, I agree with you. If Chelsea sort the issue out, then I would expect so.
That the fourth spot, we've just mentioned a whole bunch of teams competing. Arsenal got this wonderful opportunity, like now with the games in hand, the points already on the table and stuff. If they were to muck it up, this season. I could see that it being like they may never get another opportunity like this in the near, not never, but in the near future, because it's going to be so difficult.
I disagree, because I think you can see, and I think anybody who disagrees needs to get their head out the sand. You can see the improvement that Arteta is bringing to Arsenal in terms of we're now beginning to see flexibility in terms of tactically. I've done pieces recently on like Granit Xhaka's positioning,
with Partey,
in terms of him. And as soon as I did the piece about Granit Xhaka playing higher, he played much deeper against Aston Villa, ironically. So, but it shows they're beginning to have a little bit of flexibility.
Oh man, this is not a critique of them at all, James.
They haven't got a centre forward that scores goals at the moment, but so they might add that in the summer.
And if they're in the Champions League, do you think they could get like a Nunez and who knows, right?
Why not? I mean,
exactly.
Calvert-Lewin, Isaac, there's loads they're being linked to. I'm sure they'll buy someone of that ilk who's, I mean, Lacazette's doing a really good lead job for them,
but he's not.
In fairness,
he's not the next.
He's not prolific, and Arsenal fans will know that.
Yeah.
So no, I wouldn't say that at all. I feel like Arsenal were running in the right direction, actually. And I think back to Arteta's comments when they drew with Crystal Palace earlier in the season, when they got a really late equaliser in a 2-2. And Arteta did a really, really fascinating interview afterwards, which kind of got overlooked, where he spoke about, he was asked, do you think the reason that you're having this lack of consistency in results is down to the age profile of the squad?
Okay.
And he laughed and said, yeah, this is obvious, and this is going to continue to happen for a while. And it might be that on the run-in, because of the lack of experience, they might have the odd dodgy result. But at the moment, they're showing consistency. I mean, they're at their best defensively, I'd argue, for 6-7 years or so.
I totally agree.
Right
no disagreement from me. Yeah. I watched that Villa game that you just mentioned, James. I watched that in the pub with Tom actually over the weekend. And it was about as comfortable as you possibly could have imagined, right? It was defended really well. And look, my point here is not a criticism. I think what Arteta has done there, the bollocks he's shown to remove players, not just Aubameyang, but actually to change the whole composition of the squad, is so commendable. He's learned under Guardiola, hasn't he? I think it's awesome what he's doing there. I just feel like this opportunity, bear in mind, we're going to say how difficult it's going. They can play as well next season, but the number of teams I think they're going to be up against competing for it is going to be even harder. So that was my point, really. It's like, they can't afford to blow this. And that number 9 player to take over from Lacazette, I think would be a better quality if they manage it.
Go back to last summer, and actually it would have looked even harder for Arsenal Tottenham.
Yeah, true.
Because most people thought United had finished second. United were buying players to go and challenge for the title, right? Really were, and it's not improved from there. No. So it's amazing how quickly it will change. I would look at Arsenal and Tottenham particularly and say, let's say Arsenal finish 4th and Tottenham finish 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
Like both teams for me will still improve next season, no matter which way round that is. In Tottenham's case, it's important that the manager stays. So if Conte goes, it could fall apart. I think Arsenal are on an upwards trajectory. They're a long way from trying to match City, Liverpool tables and actually win the league and stuff.
Yeah, the 90 points. No, not happening.
They're heading in the right direction. But then who knows, Tom, next season, Liverpool and City might both drop their standards like Liverpool did last year. And maybe 85, 86 will win the title suddenly. It's really difficult to envisage that right now. But then you also mentioned, Villa, Leicester, West Ham, Wolves, Newcastle. Like maybe you mentioned who's going to take 6 points off Newcastle in the coming years. Maybe that's the sort of thing that will bring it down to sub 90 to win the league. Maybe
I can't
drag
wait
it down to
I think it's going to be
70 for Champions League.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how it goes. All of these competitive teams, hopefully in the league, because that, again, trying to keep it vaguely fantasy related for listeners, but the number of players, I think, where you'll be like, especially at the beginning of the season when there's going to be a lot of unknowns. It's going to be exciting putting the teams in. There should be a lot of variance there.
In terms of fantasy now for those two teams, there's a strong case to say you could have treble Arsenal and treble Tottenham.
Definitely.
Which I think is also having an influence in terms of how much we're looking at teams like Leicester, West Ham. Jared Bowen's injury is obviously not helped, for example. No, but like in Saka and Kulusevski, the fact that they're in the kind of in between 6 and 7 million bracket,
that's right.
It's not a reason not to stick them in. Tottenham have got Doherty at 4.8ish or so. Arsenal got Ben White at 4.5 or similar.
It's a great point, James. The prices, it makes them very gettable. They won't be next year, right?
These guys, I mean, Kulusevski. I think Kulusevski, since that internal break in January. I think he's second for XA of all players in the league over that period. I'm sure I saw that on Understat.
Yeah.
And that's despite the fact he didn't start the first 2 games in that period. And look at the value of him. Saka is now looking, I mean, every time you watch him, he looks better and better.
Doesn't he, though? What a boy.
Yeah, he's a terrific player. Those 2 players are going to be in the 8 million or so bracket next year. So they're not as gettable. Then you go back and you're looking at your Barnes and your Maddisons again, or is someone, whoever Newcastle buy, for example. Jared Bowen's going to be 8 million or so next year. So you begin to look at different players. Who's going to be the Bowen, Saka and Kulusevskis that emerge next season rather than now?
The question which we always struggle to do, that who's going to be the next ones, definitely. Yeah, it's a really good point. And the pricing of these guys is, Ben White was, I guess, a bit different with the signing taking place when it did and stuff, but obviously they're gonna be inflated and will just make it more difficult. Just before we move on to the second one, James, so I think we'll put that one to bed. But you mentioned Man United there, and I've sort of character assassinated them immediately because I just think they're just so badly run. And the fact that they finished second last year, right, third the season before, they then brought in Rafael Varane, Jadon Sancho, and Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And it's like, how can a team that finished second drop off so far? But I watched them closely last year. You mentioned Liverpool had, the drop off with the terrible injuries they had. They actually, I think, it ended up finishing only 5 points behind them, despite this for them.
Yeah, I think they won the last 6 in a row or something.
Is that right? It was actually the trend directions were they were going to cross pretty soon, right after that. So I was worried for United. Then they made these signings, but they never addressed that central midfield slot. Nemanja Matic, obviously, getting on a bit now, and Solskjaer would just play the double pivot with Fred and McTominay there, and never kind of addressed it now. And the question marks over the manager. Right now, we've mentioned all these signings and what have you that people are planning. In my head, United can't do that until they've got a manager in place. You mentioned Eric Ten Hag just a few moments ago.
It's looking more and more likely that it's going to be him, is the noises.
Definitely. He's Bookie's favourite, right? And I think it'd be a great, for what it's worth, I think he's the right appointment. But I just want, do you see this as critical that they have this plan in place and announce it during this international break so that they can plan these transfers so they don't miss out on stuff?
No, I don't think so,
because
I think if the chances are that if it's going to be Ten Hag, it's possible that Ten Hag, Ajax, Manchester United already know, and those talks potentially can be taking place. If Ten Hag comes in and says, I want you to spend 150 million on Declan Rice, it's not necessarily as simple as that, as you go and get the player. Football doesn't work like that necessarily. But no, I don't think I don't see the benefit for anyone announcing it now, actually, because United have still got business to do. Ajax still need to win the title in Holland and stuff. They obviously went out of the Champions League, which was a surprise,
right? Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
a lot of us were asking, could they repeat what they did in 2019, and cause a real shock to obviously a world-class team like Tottenham Hotspur. But
sorry, carry on.
Do you want me to talk about that night? Is that where you're going to go?
No, I think the listeners have heard enough about that over the last few years, right? Gets shoehorned into
I don't see the benefit in United announcing it. I think it seems to be common knowledge that that's the way it's probably heading. I think whether it's Ten Hag, whether it's Pochettino, whomever, they're not suddenly going to challenge for the title next year. The way those two managers want to play, you need to move out the people who, I'm going to say individualistic, but can actually play within the framework and systems that those two guys want to play in. And
feels like United
don't have them players right now.
No, they don't. They've also got, I do agree. I think the point for me was, you mentioned Declan Rice there. Look, I've resigned myself to the fact that he will leave West Ham, right? I love him. He's probably James, probably my favourite player. Potentially, it might end up being ever for West Ham. I just think he just embodies everything that I like as a footballer, as a man, as a West Ham icon.
He's
and stuff. But he's a fantastic player, isn't he? Right, and he's going to go on to have an incredible career. And it might be this summer when he leaves. And he's, ironically, I think he's exactly what Man United need. I just worry that they destroy him, because that's what they've done to so many other players over the last few years. And for them to get him, you'd have to spend a lot of money. And what happens if it's not the sort of setup that a Ten Hag or Pochettino or whatever wants? Can they bankroll that without a manager being in place? I don't know. I don't know whether or not you could you could
I think
that.
Declan Rice would definitely work under a Ten Hag or a Pochettino if he went in there. It's perfect, actually, irrespective of whether it's 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. But I mean, West Ham seem to have, I would say, released to sources, mention 150 million, and it's not going to be 150 million.
It's not. No, it's not.
Wait another year and get him for 100 or something, wouldn't it? So,
we'll
to be honest, if West Ham are actually going to hold firm on that, then Declan Rice will play for West Ham next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, besides that, he will. I'm sure he'll move on and have an incredible career. But all right, cool. Let's put that one to bed. A bit of a top four chat then, James. So next topic, totally different. So you and I, pretty similar ages. Obviously, it's the international break.
We don't look it, mate.
Say no more.
I mean, you look far younger than me.
We've both got grey sprouting through in our beards, but that's not fun. So, but obviously, international break being recorded, or we're recording during the international break. I wanted to get your thoughts on how you see the England dynamic, not necessarily how the team plays, but like the dynamic of now and the last, say, 2 or 3 years versus when we grew up. And I don't really want to add my thoughts yet because I don't want to lead you into that. But all I would say is how different it feels in terms of like camaraderie and togetherness. And what are your overarching thoughts on how that is, how it's come to be? Does it impact the league competitions and stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
Are you trying to go down the route in terms of there used to be cliques and clashes, go back to the golden generation and that sort of thing?
Definitely.
I think it's down to Southgate.
Okay.
Is the number one reason. It's changed all that, hasn't it? In terms of profile of what he wants, how people have to be respectful and treat each other. And I also think go back to the 2016, which particularly in 2004 should have won the Euros more than 2000. The 2006 issues started to happen with Rooney not being fit, Michael Owen getting injured, not taking Jermaine Defoe. Bizarrely, we'll take a 16-year-old kid instead. Left us light up front, but we obviously had a great midfield, of which he would never play Michael Carrick, who was the most suitable to sit behind all them great midfield players. And
another of my CDM West Ham heroes.
Don't get me started on that. But I think now what you've got is the generation of footballers have grown up in terms of different ways, and I think in terms of their respect for each other, their awareness of each other. I think there's an understanding that, okay, you play for City, you play for Liverpool, you go to war with each other in a couple of weeks, but let's try and do the best for our country while we're here. I mean, it was only recently Rio Ferdinand did an interview on BT, didn't he? Said like we wouldn't talk to the Liverpool players and stuff.
I watched that interview. Yeah, it was. I watched it open mouth. I couldn't believe it, but it was. Well, I said I couldn't believe it. Actually, in retrospect, it probably did explain a few things, and it was. Makes
but then Ericsson was a manager who let them do their thing, right? So I think Southgate has left out people intentionally who people clamour and go, right, you should be part of the squad, etc. You go, I'm not sure you're going to fit in with this group actually.
You won't.
So the whole group ethos is so important. I mean, think back even to the summer. You're obviously all clamouring for Grealish to play and stuff like that, and quite rightly so.
I was one of them.
And there was a lot of, why is Saka in the squad? And Saka played, and Saka was great. And then by the time the semis come round, everyone's like, I want Saka to play. I loved Southgate's comment before the Germany, after the Germany game, when he said, I knew that if I picked that team and it lost, I was dead.
Yeah.
Because nobody wanted him to play that way against Germany. He was right, wasn't he?
I know. Yeah, I'm with you. So you think it's down to him?
Massively. I had a question on the stream on Friday, like, how long do you think you'll be in charge? And I said, well, it looks like we may host the Euros in 2028. It wouldn't surprise me if he's still in charge then.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I got a lot of time for him as a man as well as a manager. He's proved me wrong, right? I was very anti the appointment, but he's proved me wrong. I've got total trust in him now and what he's trying to do, and that squad ethos. Did Luke Shaw's interview kind of prompted this thought, James, in terms of what he said? And look, I think it's as much a reflection on the situation we just mentioned at Man United, which is by all accounts pretty toxic at the moment.
That's interesting with Luke Shaw specifically, because obviously Mourinho said some very derogatory things about him in terms of I had to coach him through the game and stuff. He obviously improved massively with Solskjaer, and now he feels like that trust is not there again. It's interesting dynamic. It
is, mate. It is. Yeah. And in terms of how it means, like, so you see, I don't know, good example of like John Stones hugging Harry Maguire, for example, at during a Manchester derby sort of would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Do you think that impacts level of performance at all when it comes to the league? Do you think there's not that bite there that needs to be there and it's a bit lesser as a result, or not? They're still going at it?
I think it's changing a little bit in terms of the rivalry. I mean, if I supported either of those two clubs, I probably would rather not see that, like do it off camera in the tunnel afterwards. But even like, obviously Saka got terrible abuse after obviously the Euro final and stuff, him and Rashford and Sancho and stuff. We played Arsenal in a friendly, massive flag on the Tottenham end. We stand with Bukayo Saka and stuff. Like, there's no way that would have happened on a Tottenham stand 3-4 years ago. I'm not saying that the abuse would have carried on, but if people's awareness and understand, like, it's not on, right? These guys are human beings, so that's changing massively. I think there's more of an understanding to say that those guys played together for England. It's okay to think that they're going to be friends as well. You still want them to kick lumps out of each other, for want of a better term, when they play each other. And probably do it off camera. But that's the way the game's going. We see it all the time now, don't we? Shirt swaps at half time and stuff like that. I mean, it's a bit cringy on that, but it's the way it's gone.
I think exactly it is the way it's gone. And actually, I think, like, as someone who's got more sort of back into international football recently as well, kind of seeing that on Mason Mount and Declan Rice, to bring it back to my team, see them getting on and stuff when they're still going at it on the pitch, still want to win the game. But actually, I'm like, do you know what? I want them to be not friendly as such, but to be kind of have that camaraderie, because ultimately, when this comes to a World Cup game, I want the two of them completely okay to go and fucking win a tournament, because I think this team's definitely good enough to win a tournament, and it would be incredible to see. Even though I think the World Cup is going to be a weird one in December and stuff, but
I mean, I think that'll be really open competition. Actually,
so do I.
I don't think there is an outstanding favorite as such.
No, which makes it better, right? Makes it more fun. I still think we're weak at centre half. I don't think Kylian Mbappe's losing sleep about the prospect of facing that centre.
No, but I don't think Harry Kane will be losing sleep about playing the French either, mate.
That's true. So, I think attacking, our team is great. I don't want to criticize it at all. I really like what they've done. So, all right, sound. Look, next one, James, is more of a fantasy specific question, but more about what you guys do on Planet FPL. So I wondered what you thought. How do you see the future of like fantasy online content over the next few years? Do you think it will stay more an audio? Like, you guys are primarily, you're a podcast, right? I mean, there's loads of other stuff you do, your live streams and stuff, which I know are on YouTube and what have you, done in-person stuff, pre-COVID shenanigans and stuff. But
we will again.
Yeah, man, definitely. And I'll be a part of it. And I'm sure a lot of listeners can't wait as well. But how do you see fantasy football online content over the next however long? Do you think it will stay largely as is in terms of podcasting and keeping it in that space, or do you think it's more going to be the visual and the YouTube type stuff and in person? How do you see it going?
I think people's habits will change, right? I mean, was podcasts a big thing 10 years ago? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. We might all be on the metaverse, I guess, in 5 years or so. I really don't know. I think me and Suj have always had the attitude that we'll move with what people want generally, but primarily, yes, it's a podcast, will stay as a podcast, but I think people's habits will change with technology, won't they? So I mean, I don't know, maybe in 10 years we'll be doing the podcast in your living room via virtual reality. I mean, I have no idea.
I think the thing with you guys as well, James, because you're such a diehard Spurs fan, you've always been very open about Spurs are playing, I'm watching Tottenham. That's just the way it is. And
there's no deadline stream game at 38.
No, exactly. It's and like you've been completely open, despite the success of the pod and what have you. That's not going to change, and I don't think people would ultimately expect or want it to, because that's who you are and stuff. But I wonder whether or not there will be like clamor for live streaming during games from people to talk about what the actual points coming in will be, and actually it'd be less about the retrospective listens and stuff, and actually more about the in-game experience and talking that through, like how you used to do with the Champman FPL and stuff. Like I that's kind of where I wonder where we'll end up going, because people like to see their live rank updated.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the way Ragbolly's site has taken off on that. So many people refresh on each goal, don't they? What's my rank now and stuff. So everybody wants the information yesterday, don't they? It's not even now, it's yesterday. So yeah, I mean, look, if you're asking me, can I ever see myself putting a camera in my face while Tottenham are playing? No, that's a step too far for me. Would we ever do something like a Soccer Saturday style?
Yeah.
Well, kind of done it with the Champ Man stuff.
Yeah.
But again, it's not something I really want to start, because then the demand is, well, where is it next week? And I'm sorry, mate, Tottenham are playing at 3:00. So
that's it.
It's not happening. And that's for me personally where my priorities will always lie as such.
And so they
generally
should.
We do most of our work Monday to Friday and stuff as well. Try and keep it like a normal working week and stuff. So but we're always up for evolving and stuff in terms of like lives on that. You would like to do something in the as early as the summer potentially now.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. It bodes well, doesn't it? Well, it'd be interesting to see. And I guess, as you know, we're all creatures of habit, aren't we? And stuff. And like, actually, for people who listen to like every show and who are Patreon supporters like myself as well, that routine's actually, I think there's something therapeutic about that. The fact that it is actually, this is what's happening on this day. No upfront, it's coming, and it's that regularity. So there's probably a good sense in just keeping the status quo there as well. Okay, cool. So you had a bunch of questions, James, come into your question on Twitter.
We don't normally get to the questions, so she looks at them and goes, "Oh, I've covered that. So this will be nice."
Yeah, well, we definitely haven't covered the nonsense that I've come up with, because they were completely off.
I like it. That's proper hijack. Well done, mate.
Yeah, man, definitely. I thought I'd stitch you up a bit. So, look, thanks to everyone who replied. There were some really good questions there. So I'm just going to read these out, James, verbatim, and we can just have a chat about each of them. So, gosh, I hadn't remembered I hadn't to actually say who it came in from, but Fanto Mantle says Argentina haven't lost a game in which Messi has scored since 2009, which made me think, what is the most meaningless type of stat you regularly see bandied about? Now, whilst you go ponder that, James, I had one which not necessarily meaningless, but I think one stat which I think people put too much weight on. I wanted to get your thoughts on this as well. We talk about set piece takers and like routes to assists in FPL. And people say he's on corners, for example. First of all, I think there's too much attention paid to that in terms of how often do we see a corner that clears the first man that is then headed home directly? Like, it's infrequent, right? Yeah. But actually, I wondered, that stat in of itself. I remember Christian Eriksen, bless him, back with us, back scoring goals for his team, his country, amazing. It used to be a corner taker for Tottenham, but quite often it would be taken short, right? It would be rolled short to somebody close by, and actually they would be the one to put the cross in. So I've always steered away from that stat as one that I pay too much attention to.
There's certain ones. I mean, if you and I think part of ones, and I guess this would be a more open conversation, is the outswinging corners.
Yeah,
Trent and Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
If just thinking off the top of my head in terms of, right, okay, give me examples where people, the first header is the one that goes directly in the goal. Yeah. I think of Liverpool.
Yeah,
Trent and Robertson outswinging corners. People like Van Dijk, Matip, maybe even Fabinho coming and attacking. Firmino coming and attacking the corner. Whereas to go back to Eriksen, Eriksen's was all about zonally where he put the ball. And people at Tottenham used to moan he'd always hit the front man.
Okay,
but it's one of the most fearsome corners you can have is if you get it just over the first man and someone runs into the space, it's almost undefendable. It's an area that Partey's goal against Leicester a few weeks ago. That's a good example. Brentford have scored a few goals like that this year. I think of Tony at Norwich the other week where it's an Eriksen corner. I want to say Janssen flicked it on.
Yeah.
And Tony scored at the back post. But if you can get the ball into that area, it's incredibly difficult to defend. So perhaps the style of the corners is probably the next in terms of looking at it and going, is it out swinging? Is it in swinging?
It's so easy to put that lens on that stat.
Someone's going to put that in and find the right out swing corners, in swinging corners. How many are scored from out swinging, in swinging? I wouldn't have a clue what the data is. Because there's certain teams you play, and I think, in fact, to be honest, West Ham, I think of like Cresswell's deliveries and stuff. Like if it meets a Dawson or a Souček or something,
it's not surprising.
Like you're in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah, under Moyes, one of the big. I mean, he's done a great job there. We haven't talked much on the pod today about West Ham, but one of the big benefits or the improvements we've seen under Moyes is the threat that we have from set pieces. It's not that surprising with his background and what he achieved certainly at Everton as well. But when we have the opportunity for Aaron Cresswell primarily to put the ball in, the likes of Souček in the air and others as well, we're a threat against any team. But I really like that actually, that you could actually consider the stat in a different context, outswinger, inswinger, percentage of time they clear the first man, that type of stuff, like suddenly then it becomes fantasy relevant.
And that's the next level, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, people trying to improve on data, and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
You drill in and go in swinging corners, out swinging corners, short corners, corners into the box. I'm sure if you do that in terms of how many percentile go into the box. I do have an answer for you, Tom.
Go on, mate.
In terms of useless that I see a lot.
Yeah, go on.
Heat maps.
Oh Christ, yeah, go on.
do my head in. and I saw a brilliant example of this the other day. And forgive me, I don't know who posted it, but someone posted
Hopefully it wasn't me.
No, it wasn't you. No, it was really good. It was highlighted.
Oh, okay, definitely wasn't then.
Someone posted Harry Kane's heat map when obviously he was fairly disastrous up till the end of December, and compared it with his heat map since. It's the same.
Right.
But obviously the narrative always with Kane when he's not getting FPL returns is he's too deep.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, it's not in terms of positionally and where he's on the ball. Look at how he kept dropping off West Ham's back three last weekend and stuff. He's still doing the same things. Just now he's playing a lot better. His form is so much better.
It's funny that you
I think we can put a lot into heat maps. So the way overlooked. Yeah. Oh, look at him. Look how high he's getting advanced. He's never got anyone across to. So what is it in isolation? Yeah,
it roots all the way back to when we were talking about the observing how the team's playing, right? And that intangible that you can't necessarily get from that. So found that really interesting. And actually it made me smile, that one, because I remember probably was years ago, you mentioned on the pod that people bringing this up and saying Harry's playing really deep, like CDM. You're like,
I want him to.
But you also said, welcome to the party. Like that's been the case for ages and ages. Years. Yeah. Okay, good one. So we don't like corners and we don't like heat maps. So we like the corners, but they need more.
I think we like the corners subject to which team's taking them.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's an interesting topic as well. Like I on the videos I've been doing for fantasyfootballfix.com as well, I really focus in on the difference between team level metrics and individual, like player level metrics, right? And the fixation or the temptation that we only look at players, which is totally understandable because you're picking 15 of them for your team, right? But actually, particularly like defensive wise, I'll always start by looking at how many shots the team is giving up in the box, outside the box, the quality of the shot, right? It's got nothing to do with the suckers in there at like an overarching level. It's like actually this team is conceding boatloads of chances in the box on average versus ones that aren't actually. And then you then say, okay, these give me the teams that I'm interested in. And then you start looking at the individual. So I think that would be a piece of advice for people listening, is to try and change your mindset a little bit from someone who's ranked at the lofty heights of 150k. If you want that type of, like, that's what you should be doing to do that.
Here's another one I'll throw back your way then, Tom. Let's say you've got a free kick, edge of the box, say 25 yards out, dead essential.
Yeah.
Harry Kane standing over the ball. James Ward-Prowse is standing over the ball. Oof. Why is the XG for those two players the same?
Yeah, it's a really good question,
and that's not a criticism of XG in any way. It's just looking at statistics. Harry Kane, as much as I just talked him up, he's one free kick away from the longest consecutive record since I think the stats were given of free kicks taken without scoring in the Premier League. One more.
Yeah.
And someone messaged me a few weeks back, says, why is Eric Dyer taking free kicks for Tottenham? Because Harry never scores from free kicks. And then you look at James Ward-Prowse's record. Ward-Prowse would be another one. You go, okay, he's on corners, obviously great deliverer and stuff.
Yeah, that's an observation from that Southampton-Watford game. His delivery is always on point.
Oh, he's incredible.
It was every single ball he put into the box was on the money. Every single one for the 90 minutes.
But they don't score from that many, Southampton. No. But that's not down to him.
No, that's
so if you put him in the Liverpool team and had him take the corners, they'd probably still score just as many.
The XG one's a really good point. So you're talking about the actual, how does a model actually reflect the quality of the person taking it? Yeah, it's like Messi's goals versus his XG over like 15 years was always like statistically didn't make sense that he scored that many. It's like, yeah, but it's because he's the best player that the planet's ever seen.
Son is regularly an XG buster, right?
Yeah,
he's one of the best finishers on the planet, and he can score from all sorts of angles with left or right foot.
I think if we crack that one, James, we won't need to worry about podcasting.
Well, eventually, make me unemployed, mate. Yeah, I should imagine.
Okay, let's move on. So we got a question here from @seller_MD, and he wants to know, this is specifically points totals now in relation to overall rank. And he's wondering how many points are too many to recover in order to reach the top 10K. So I did do a little bit of a look beforehand, James. So that top 10K rank at the time of recording, it's around 2059, 2060, depending on there's so many that have the same points total, right? Yeah. It comes down to how many transfers you've made and stuff. So, 2060 for ease. I mean, it might not actually factor into your thinking, but 8 game weeks to go. If your goal, or the listener's goal is, I want to finish in the top 10K, which is pretty, regular goal that people have at the beginning of the season and stuff. At what point would you say, do you know what, it ain't going to happen for you this season? Is it 100 points behind? Is it more than that? Is it less? What do you reckon?
Well, we'll throw it back to you then. So I'm 72K, 1,980. So what am I, 80 points behind?
Yeah.
Can I do it?
Definitely. I think you can. So I think first of all, there's never a straightforward answer.
I'm telling you I can't.
It's because but you definitely can. Like you mentioned, because it comes down to chips as well, right?
And I've got a lot left, and I don't
got a lot left, right?
Top 10K's off the table. Top 20K.
Yeah, but that's going to be a handful of points between 10 and 20K, right? So it theoretically can happen. I think making 10 points per game week
it's a big ask.
Is about as good on average, is about as good as you can do over the long term, is what I think. So 80 points, 8 game weeks, I think it can be done. I think you'd be doing really bloody well to do it, because you'd have to get that 10 points every week for 8 weeks on the spin, which it becomes increasingly more and more difficult, to keep managing to do it. But I think that's about the level, 80 points behind. So what are we saying, 1980-ish?
See, it depends how you look at it in isolation as well, because I could look at it with the majority of chips left and go, right, let's say I want an extra 20 from my bench boost. I want an extra 25 from my wild card. I want an extra 25 from other free hit. Suddenly that's 70 points already. But there's a lot of people in the way who are also going to be using chips and stuff as well, which makes that difficult. Is it impossible? No, but I mean, we'd have to nail the running.
You would, yeah. You'd have to take it. You'd have to take increasingly wild punts and stuff that would work for you, and which, statistically, it's really not.
And then it comes down to what do you want to do. So, is it that important to you? So, if you've hit 20K by game week 37, do you want to go absolutely rogue and back Ollie Watkins away to Man City in game week 38, knowing you could end up at 40K if it goes wrong? Or do you want to push for it? So then the closer you get, and that may come down to certain people in terms of mini league plans and stuff like that.
The death of the mini league, right? I think this is something that we could have talked about. I think that's, by the way, James, that's well put as well. It's your risk profile, isn't it? It's are you prepared to swing for the lines in tennis terms to win the match point? Whereas if you lose it, it's going to be a disaster. You're going to lose, right? I don't know. I think playing within the realms of quote unquote sensible management and managing your chips effectively, I think shooting to gain 10 points on the field, which, as you say, is harder and harder to do when you're in the upper echelons, right? I think that's about as good as it can get over an 8 game week run. So 85 points behind, I think you could still do it, but you'd have the tip of the hat from the Planet FPL podcast, that's for sure, if you manage it.
Of course you can. You don't have to swing with the differentials as well, because the combined ownership is something that really gets underrated as well.
Yeah. Captaincy as well. Always a big factor. But that would say, I think we're converging on a 80-ish points behind, did you say?
Who are you captain this week as it stands, Tom?
No.
You going Mo at home to Watford? Is that the plan?
Do you know what? I've got it on Harry at the moment. That might just be because of last week. It was on him. I went for him obviously last week, but the captaining Salah in a home game has been the default for me for all season. I think this probably feeds into this question, James. It's am I prepared now with 8 game weeks to go to back against the favourite? Mini league wise, I think I whinged to you previously that my main mini league kind of got binned in December, because the guys who I play with, there's about 20 of us in that league, maybe a few more. And it is money, but it's nominal money really, but it's just something fun that we chat about in the pub and stuff. But they all sacked it off because of the COVID situation. I would say that they are engaged but not active, so they'd rock up on a Friday after work or whatever and make their transfers for the weekend. Games would be pulled and they'd suddenly look at their team and have no players and stuff. And I do get it. I do get why they were so frustrated. and it just resulted in that mini league being disbanded, effectively, or redundant, because no one was participating anymore. I'm still playing it, but I'm the only one really taking part now.
Are you first?
Yeah, but by like 100 points, and I've not really done that well.
If you wasn't, Tom.
Yeah, I've not like I said, there's no great shakes this season. So if they'd stuck with it, they could have easily taken me. Those was going somewhere with this point, right? But so that's no longer my focus. So it is now just about, can I have a decent OR? At best, I might get in the top 100k maybe. But it's a difficult one, James, isn't it? So I think at the moment I'm in kind of, like, is Harry Kane in a home game against Newcastle a huge punt? No. Is he the most sensible captain? No. I think Mo Salah is. I guess you'll be going for Salah, right? I would have thought.
Yeah, as long as I think he's going to start.
Yeah, of course.
Then I'll go with Watford.
I might.
The historical of Salah versus that team as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Just adds to it.
It could ruin any chance of the top 100k for me. So yeah, I haven't decided yet. Right now, it's on Harry Kane. I think I just loved how he's been playing, James, for the last several weeks. As I'm sure
Harry has been since he came on against Morecambe in the third round of Cup.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
I said it on the Tottenham podcast afterwards. Something was different with him when he came on at the weekend. I remember that show, man. Yeah, I remember. And then I think because the Arsenal game was postponed, then the next league game we had was the incredible Leicester game, and he was magnificent.
Unplayable that day. Absolute. I
think he had 10 shots that night at Leicester.
Yeah, he was mesmeric, wasn't he? Yeah.
Quite often with Harry, and we talk about heat maps. Quite often it's what's Harry's shot volume.
Yeah, shot volume
really
exactly.
Important.
Yeah. The Stats Bomb podcast talk about that as well. Shot volume is really predictive.
Interestingly, I'll throw a little bit of the stat in. And I looked back to that period, sort of start of game week 24, again after that January interlude. And Harry's highest for XG over that period of all players in the Premier League. But actually, when you drill into it, per 90, Mo's the only one who's playing regularly, still tops more than one. Because Salah's played equivalent of 5 games over that period, and Kane's played 9. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to just put the stats out and go, "Oh, Kane's doing better on XG than Salah." Okay, right. We'll drill into it properly, and actually, when you look, you're still Mo.
It is, and he's the right choice. I think it's a swing.
And then Harry Kane will play Newcastle. I don't know if Mo Salah's going to play Watford with Champions League afterwards, Man City afterwards, Champions League, then Man City again, then Man United.
Do you not think it's at this stage though? Like they're on right now recording. They're on for a quadruple, right?
Yeah. But then what did Ferguson do in United treble team?
He rotated a lot.
Absolutely. Yes, he did right at the end.
Yeah, he did. Even in that semi-final against Arsenal. Yeah.
Exactly. Started with Solskjaer and Sheringham up front, despite how good obviously York and Cole were playing. I think Ryan Giggs was a substitute that night.
I think I heard he made 7 changes for that game from the one before.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, which is I heard that literally the last week or so.
And in Liverpool's case, it's not like the reliability they had on him a couple of years ago. I mean, if Liverpool go Diaz, Jota, Firmino, or Mane, can they beat Watford at home?
Scary, isn't it?
Of course they can. And if you need Mo with half hour to go, then he's there, isn't he?
Yeah, true. But all right, let's move on. So actually, it's a good segue into a question from @Flair Player. Ryan Cameron asks, are the likes of Laporte and Matip good options, or are we just kidding ourselves that they can get anywhere near Cancelo and Robertson? So I have done some comparison stuff before, James, but I wondered whether or not you wanted to.
You turned up for who got the assist, didn't you?
A little bit, yeah. I'm a jack of all trades. But I wondered whether or not we wanted to tackle this more as a broad brush in terms of, those are good examples, right? In terms of you've got budget options versus a clearly better, inverted commas, attack option within FPL. Do you think that concept of covering ever applies, or do you think it's just worth just pay the money, get Andy Robertson, get Trent Alexander-Arnold? Don't kid yourself that actually Joel Matip is in any way comparable to those folks.
It's not as straightforward that though, is it? Because it might be the difference that gets you Kane instead of Lacazette or something. So I mean, that's probably quite extreme, but I think you get the point of what I'm saying. Yes. I think Joel Matip is extremely dangerous personally, purely because he's probably part of Liverpool's first choice centre back with Virgil van Dijk, obviously. Konate's shown he can play. Joe Gomez is fit. Matip is always going to struggle to play two games a week. That's the problem. Whereas Laporte, we can look at it and go, well, he has been first choice all season.
Yeah, he has, yeah.
And Guardiola, it seems to me with Cancelo now kind of fixed into left back rather than I don't know what side he's going to play on.
Yep.
He really wants Laporte as a natural left footer inside that.
Yep.
Which means they can move. So if they end up in transition, kind of like a back three without the ball, because Walker sits off deeper. Laporte's played left back for City before. It's far more natural. So I think Laporte is fine. And also with Laporte, like he's a real threat from set pieces and stuff.
He is.
And he's cheap. And that's not to say that Matip is not, but I would have far more confidence going for Laporte than Matip as a comparison.
Yeah, totally
I'd rather go Laporte over Cancelo than Matip over one of the Liverpool guys, if that makes sense. That's how I'd feel about it.
I'm with you. No disagreement
but I also would not want to go without Cancelo.
It's funny. It's I've got a couple of thoughts there. I'll come on to the Cancelo one in a minute. But the Laporte one, like last season, such a blip, right? I mean, when he was picked, he was, I thought, comparatively pretty damn poor particularly at the back end of the season. And John Stones played really well last season as well. Yep. But the season prior to that, I thought he was outstanding. And again, this season, he's been great. And like you say, being that left footer on that left side as well, to me, he fits into the Guardiola way of playing like perfectly. Actually, as well, if I was to ask you goals, James, in the Premier League, how many do you reckon Cancelo's got this season?
Oh, it's not many. I think it's one, is it?
It's one goal.
At Newcastle,
Laporte 3. You know,
but Cancelo's got about 8 or 9 assists, has he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, assist wise, and that. I mean, you can go into the stats, but like, it's nothing that the people are going to be shocked about. Cancelo offers heaps of assist potential with where he's playing, how advanced he is, etc.
And also, as seen in the Palace game recently, and it's the same with like Robertson and Trent. The chance creativity means that in a clean sheet, he could be a 9-pointer or so anyway.
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah. And it's interesting as well that the shot volume is actually not that different. Obviously, that. Because they call them shots, right? So, a header would count the same as a 25-yard effort, right? It's still an attempt on goal.
Even in that game at Palace, he hit the post as well, didn't he?
I know.
I wouldn't be surprised if say Cancelo got 7 or 8 goals next season, for example.
He's going to be. You're going to have to pay a lot for that privilege.
Interesting to add the point to that. We're talking about the likes of Bowen, Saka, Kulusevski will all go up quite a bit in price next year. I bet the likes of James, Trent, Robertson, Cancelo don't.
You're always expecting huge price increases, aren't you, James, in your close season pod?
I mean,
they always let you down.
Every year on Trent, I'm like, how are you less than 9 million every year?
It's so funny. And
it never happens.
Sudge's entrepreneurial background is like, no, we'll be able to get him for a little bit cheaper than that.
It's not in the game maker's interest to have Trent Alexander-Arnold at 10 million, for example, because the majority of people go, I'm not paying 10 million for a defender. Yeah, I would genuinely still consider it at that price. But I think, I mean, Laporte, obviously, because he's been really cheap this year, will obviously get a hike and stuff. But James and the others, they won't go up massively. No. And I bet you when we sit down and look at it on game week 2, we'll be going, I've gone cheap here. I've gone with 4.5s. And we'll all be reflecting on it a few weeks later going, why have I again not gone James, Cancelo, Robertson, Trent, and just got on with it and let that go and then rotate the forward back? That's what I have an idea in my mind next year. Particularly if you've got Salah, he's going to be consistent as a captaincy option. You can go without second.
You can
premium and stuff.
Right, this is one for you, James. So it comes in from FPL Binary at FPL Binary. Asks, James, with your knowledge of predicting fixture placements, my plan is to wildcard 34, 35, free hit 36, and bench boost in 37. Alternatively, I could set up the wildcard to bench boost 36 and then free hit 37 or even 38. So kind of a classic deliberation there at this stage of the season. He asks, FPL Binary asks, do you have a preference for either strategy?
Yeah, it would be more bench boost 36.
Yeah,
definitely.
The way I was leaning.
The good news is you don't have to make that decision yet. And you'll have the information by the time you have to make the decision, particularly if you're wildcarding 35. You'll know everything at that stage by then.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wedge yourself to one or the other. I think 36 bench boost is going to look a lot better. You may also be in a position where you might even want to consider free hit 35, wildcard 34. I've discussed how I think if Chelsea lose to Real Madrid, they'll almost definitely double that week. We could have Villa Burnley go in there. We could have Watford Everton go in there. That's not to say they will happen. Equally, I'm looking at 37, not convinced about it at the moment.
Okay.
But just I think Villa Burnley could be in 34, but just literally putting that into 37 would make me want a free hit into 37. And actually, I've been looking at free hit 38 a little bit.
Yep.
As well. And part of the reason I say that as well is actually for 36 bench boosters. Because I think if Everton were to double in 36, 37, back-to-back doubles, and to be honest, the fixtures would be good. Leicester, Palace, Brentford, Watford would be the 4 fixtures, and they'd be dying for points. You win it, you will end up going for some. They go to Arsenal in game at 38. You're going to want some of that. Equally, if Villa then say had doubles 36 and 37, you're going to want some of that. They go to Manchester City in game week 38. And that's the sort of thing where you might end up in a position where you've got 4 or 5 Everton Villa going into the final day and going, don't actually want any of them. That's, they're not the only ones. I mean, Wolves potentially got a double 37, go to Liverpool 38. Watford would potentially have a double 37 or 36. They go to Chelsea 38.
Yeah.
So there might be those that you might be carrying. It could even be that 38 looks better, because one of the problems with 33, I think that we're all finding, those who want a free hit in that week, is bloody hell, those with the singles still look great.
Yeah, they do.
Kane, Kulusevski, Son, Doherty, the Liverpool guys, the City guys, the Chelsea guys, even at home to Arsenal. Sure. And 35 looks the same, and 37 may look the same. 38, once you've diverged towards a bench boost team, might even look like an alternative solution. I really don't know when I'm using that final free hit. I want the fixture information.
That one on the free hit 38, which I have seen used really effectively in the past by different managers, actually. Do you think there's anything in the like perennial kind of promise that with all the fixtures kicking off at the same time that you actually luck into some transfer to team news as well? As a consequence of that, and
possibly. I remember, obviously, in the COVID season, when we all kind of had the chips left at the end, a lot of people ended up free hitting on the final day.
Yeah, man.
But a lot of us still had like the Man City team completely wrong and stuff. Only like an hour and a half before and I think then it was an hour before the deadline, wasn't it?
It was.
And I think still a lot of people ended up free hitting players who weren't.
So you wouldn't put too much. You wouldn't put too much credence on that then.
No, I mean, the other thing is as well, you could save it for then. The title race might be done. Man City might have a Champions League final the following weekend. Then what? So, but then that might be something else. You might be sitting there with treble Man City, and Guardiola might go, I'm going to rotate the old team. We've won the league now. You free hitting like Zach Steffen and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's different ways that might go at the end.
Okay. So let's move on. So we've got a question here from FPL Anani, I think is how you pronounce that. And he asks, is having 3 premium defenders the template, and can Son cover Kane, or do I have to take a hit to get Kane in? You have a feeling on the Spurs side first before we talk about the premium?
My feeling is never sell Heung-min Son for a hit when he's got a home game coming up. And I was quite consistent before game week 29 saying I didn't like that people were doing it. I'm sure those that did it with obviously Kane returning against United, Brighton and Son blanking were glad that they did it. But then those who've obviously just done it before 30 probably didn't like doing it quite so much. Sonny's a different animal home and away. I would not take a hit to move him out this week.
Fair enough.
If you want to consider doing it in 32, particularly if you're free hitting in 33 and you've got the luxury, maybe yes, because I think the closer it gets to 32, I think Harry will be really popular for the captaincy away to Villa, with City and Liverpool playing each other. Then if you're free hitting 33, you're missing a Sun home game, then it's Brentford away.
Yeah.
That might feel like the right strategy to do it. But Son can outscore Harry Kane in any game.
Of course he can.
He's one of the best assets in the game. And even in the West Ham game, he had one moment with about 15 minutes to go where Kane played him in and he just couldn't get the ball under control. And I promise you, from being in the ground, Conte turned around to Bergwijn and said, take your jacket off, mate. And he was going to take Son off because he'd had enough of him. He was shattered. But then 5 minutes later, he goes through one-on-one. And when he gets there, you never think he's going to miss.
You don't. You know with 100% certainty he's testing the keeper, don't you? What about the premium?
Sonny any game. But Harry's, if you're buying one new, Harry, all day long.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's that to get rid of him, like you say, in that home game. Couldn't recommend it personally. So it's good to hear you say that. And in terms of the premium defenders, James, so I don't like talking about my side really on these shows, but I've got 4 quote unquote premiums now, and I've also got Matt Doherty as well as part of the back 5 that I play. So we talked about the dearth of forward options earlier on in the show as well. to me, that just lends itself to why would you not look at the premium options defensively?
I started the 18-19 season with Trent, Robertson, Van Dijk, Cole Walker, and I think Zinchenko as a back five, starting back five. Liverpool sitting there playing every week, and obviously Alisson got injured, didn't he? Game week one.
Did, mate. I remember listening, and you stuck with it for a long time.
For ages, mate, as long as I could. And as soon as I got rid of it, they had like 6-7 clean sheets in a row, didn't they?
Both ended up with like 20 clean sheets. Yeah.
And actually, had I just left it all season, which you wouldn't do because of wild cards and stuff, of course. But yeah, that's my early thoughts towards next season is, why would I not start with Trent, Robertson, James and Cancelo opening day next season? Now, something might be complete different where Man United buy one of the best wing backs in the world or something, or Arsenal, for example. But yeah, like you, I've got Cancelo, Trent, Robertson. I've got Rudiger at the moment.
Yeah, same.
And I've got Kieran Tierney, who I think is probably comparable to what you've got with Doherty as well. Yeah. So, I mean, Tierney, depending on fixture, I can take it or leave it. The other four start every week, as far as I'm concerned.
So I'd say minimum of 3 to answer the guy's question.
But then if Trent is ruled out for a couple of weeks, and at the time of recording, we don't have the information, I may end up dropping Trent all the way down to like a 3.9 and shoving the money somewhere else, for example. It might even be that I add Son to Kulusevski and Kane, possibly.
Would that still leave you with 3 premium defenders, even if you were to move Trent out for a complete
I'd still
budget?
have like Robertson, Rudiger, Cancelo.
There you go. So to answer the question, yes, you would expect 3 premium defenders to be the absolute
I would also only do that in my position, knowing I've still got that wild card.
That's fair.
Because I wouldn't want to be without Trent for long. But if the timeline comes back and it says, look, Trent's not likely to play till, say, the Merseyside derby in game week 34, I might look at it and go, well, that's when I'm wild carding possibly anyway. Fine, you can go.
Yeah, I see. Okay, just a couple more to finish up with, I think, James. So we've got at Alpha FPL asks, who do you think will be the differential player to own over the next 8 game weeks, which is actually the full remaining suite, isn't it? We've got eight left. So I actually had a look and saw what Fix were suggesting. So basically, I've looked at players with
your cheap plug, Tom. You're all allowed.
Yeah, man. 5% ownership or less is what I thought was reasonable. And I was really happy with the top player suggested, because he's a player who I've been waxing lyrical about for years. But you always get the same response from people. And as soon as you mention this guy's name, you'll know the response, right? But it's Riyad Mahrez. And people immediately retort with, you don't know if he's going to play. And I think that's fair.
Tom, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, of course. And I think it is fair. But I think what it's suggesting is that when he's on the pitch, you've got a better than good chance of him returning. And obviously we're talking differentials here as well. So I think obviously you'd have to accept that the feedback that you get from people in terms of the pushback is completely justified. And I'm not going to sit here and say, don't worry, he's going to play. All I would say is that once he's on the pitch, you should be confident that he's going to have opportunities to return for you. And that is he's an outright winner in terms of those upcoming fixtures for 5% or less. So he was the name that leapt out to me.
I got some bad news.
Come on.
Think back to the Palace game, the recent 0-0 for City.
Got it. Yeah.
No substitutions, despite having Sterling and Jesus sitting on the bench. Guardiola's explanation was we weren't going to be able to play him in behind, so it was a waste of time, basically. So Mahrez stays on the pitch because he trusts his technical quality. In terms of opening doors, the way he comes in on his left foot, the way he can run at people, all the things that we like about Riyad Mahrez. Can you see Riyad Mahrez, therefore, not playing both legs against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League?
I really couldn't say. I find predicting the team they're bordering on.
This is what everyone can do. They can Luke disable FF Scout _ Luke.
Yeah,
because he's a bit of a G in terms of predicting the Man City team.
Yeah, okay, fair play.
Don't ask me and Tom. Go and ask Luke, right? Yeah. See what he says. But I imagine, and I'll put my hands up and apologise if I'm wrong, but I imagine Luke will say, "Yeah, I bet Mahrez will play against Atletico." And then you look at the other games and go, right, so Burnley away, that's quite deep. So you actually might lose Mahrez that particular fixture as well, the first one. Liverpool at home, I think, is open ground, but Liverpool will allow space behind. So I think Sterling will probably be used in that Liverpool game.
Do you think he'll be on penalties, James, when he's on the pitch?
Mahrez. Did De Bruyne take one recently when Mahrez was on the pitch?
I can't recollect. I know that they've both taken them historically, and
I mean, until that, I was under the impression that Mahrez was first choice personally. So that certainly adds. And listen, if Mahrez is in the team, I'd expect him to return in any game. But in games afterwards as well, Brighton, Watford, Leeds, they're all allowed space. The argument might actually be, if you want to get there, a real differential for the running is Sterling.
Yeah, Sterling's a good shout as well. I'm not sure what his ownership is, James, though. I don't know. I can't imagine it's super high.
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm tipping him up. I wouldn't go anywhere near there.
No, to be honest. No. What about, so have you got any names that you're thinking leaping out at you, sort of differentials, or people that aren't necessarily talking about? Anyone that you like?
No, not overly. I think, I mean, I don't know what his live ownership is now. Antonio might be interesting for the next
Antonio,
three,
I do like it. I do like
Everton, Brentford, and Burnley over the next three, although admittedly, obviously, West Ham don't have a double in 33. But I also feel like the template is a template for the reason at the moment. So the ones to really stand out, I think people want to punt and want to get right, is the Leicester players. But we don't know where we stand.
No, we don't.
Ask me prior to them going to Newcastle in 33.
Harvey Barnes is third on this list, James. So I know you're a big fan of his.
I do like Harvey Barnes, yeah.
And it is funny. I know we're going to talk about the quality of the fixtures as well. But I have to confess, I've not had occasion to watch loads of Burnley play. But is Connor Roberts nailed into that team?
He is at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, 4.4 million. Do you think there's any scope for him to be your fifth choice defender there? I
think so, but then the argument would be, if he's going to be your fifth choice defender, when are you ever going to get him on the pitch? Therefore, should you just go for a Ben Johnson, for example? Like, that's the sort of thing I'm thinking. Well, I might even play Johnson in 31, 32, for example, if I'm coming off that Trent money. So that's the only thing. Do you need to go to Connor Roberts when you can go Ben White at similar price, for example?
Sadio Mane was the other name I did wanted to get your thoughts on as well. I mean, we talked, didn't we, about the Liverpool attacking five they've got now, right? Always the bridesmaid, right? And you're paying an absolute fortune. I think he's like 11.7 mil or something like now, right now. So how you'd shoehorn him in, I don't know. But the question is about differentials. Do you think there's anything that we could say? Home game against Watford, do you think he's any interest in Sadio Mane?
If Liverpool play in the Champions League final tomorrow, who do you think the front three would be?
Oh Christ. I think it would be. I still think he'd trust Jota to play through the middle and Mane and Salah flanking them.
I think
it's close though, man.
I think it would be Jota now, unless they really specifically wanted say it was against City, they might want specifically Firmino to do a job on Rodri, for example.
It's tough, man. They've got some
options. But I think it could be Diaz over Mane,
Yeah.
I just think he's hit the ground.
He has hit the ground
so hard and fast, and he looks top level. I couldn't make the case for Mane over Diaz or Jota right
Could
now.
you make the case for Diaz over Mane?
Yeah. Diaz over Mane, definitely. I couldn't make the case for Mane over Diaz or Jota.
Huge cost saving, isn't it? 8.1 to 11.7.
It's not just a AVB, is it?
No, it's not.
What when is it with the other 3 million? Well, no, it's not. It never is that straightforward.
Yeah. Okay, so that answers that one. And look, this will wrap it up now, James. So I've chosen a horrible name to pronounce. At Amrabatman FPL.
Amrabatman FPL will be really pleased that you just called his name horrible, mate. Suj, you can come back next week.
It's a good question, this one, and I did think about it. What's the worst penalty miss you've ever seen? And I take it he doesn't mean like watching Suj in the park in this Planet FPL penalty shootout, which has been talked about for so many years.
What's interesting is Joe's Moroccan. He was on our call with our advanced tier patrons the other day. And Morocco got a penalty while we were doing the call. We all made him turn the iPad around and show us. And I tell you what, that might be the worst penalty.
Really? Oh, no way. Yeah.
The worst one I've ever seen live in a stadium.
Okay.
Is Jason Puncheon, Crystal Palace against Tottenham.
I remember that one. Yeah, it was dreadful. Yeah,
mate, it nearly hit me. Yeah. I'm row 13 up until.
I remember that pen. That was so bad. Yeah, that's a really good shot. What about Kepa's the other day?
I mean, he's a goalkeeper. In fairness, I mean, it was funny. Majority of us laughed whether you wanted Chelsea to win or I'd say obviously people who wanted Chelsea to win weren't laughing, but those who like me didn't really care. Yeah, it was funny. It was but I wouldn't call that the worst ever.
No.
Worst ever would have to be the real car crash ones.
That was the one that leapt to me, just in terms of how much it missed the goal by.
Yeah. But I like the real car crash ones, like Zaha the other week falling over his feet at Norwich a few weeks back. The real terrible bad ones.
That's a good shout. That's a good shout. Yeah. Do you and I will probably? Do you remember the Nick Hancock football nightmares?
Yes.
There was a guy on that one. I can't show my age here. There was a guy called Peter Devine who featured on one of these videos. I don't even know the team it was, but he stumbled so badly.
He stumbles as he goes to kick it.
That's right, and the ball doesn't even make it to the 6-yard box, let alone to the goal. So that would be a good one. So I'll look that one up. So look, there are some other questions, James. They're all basically saying that I should take over from Serge. So don't disagree with any of those, but that'll about do it. So I don't know. I've no idea how long we've been talking for, but it feels to me like a good amount of time, and I've really enjoyed it, man.
I'd say so, mate. You meant to ask me now what the content is for the rest of the week.
Okay, so James, what is the content for the rest of the week?
Well done, mate. I should have had a cue card or something.
Yeah, that would have been good. Yeah, that would have been
good. 2 COTCs to come. Turfy Topper and Spirit Blues tomorrow. Burnley versus Everton, and FPL Seagull and FPL Badger on Thursday. Brighton versus Norwich. What has happened to Brighton?
I don't know.
I'm really looking forward to speaking to Sam. It can't just be that Adam Webster's not available.
Dan Burn was the glue that held everything together.
Dan Burn going as well, and I'm interested to see if Mark thinks they've still got a hope of staying up. That Adam Eder injury cost them so bad, I believe. Wednesday, Ian Parrin at Planet Sky is joining me for Sky Fantasy Football on Wednesday. Ian is a genius.
He's the man.
He is absolutely phenomenal. He sent me a message, and I think I said this on my stream on Friday. He sent me a message saying BT Sport have done it really cleverly. They should have Man City versus Newcastle in game week 36. And I was like, how?
Love it.
Don't tell me. Just tell me on the podcast how you know.
I'm glad he's on the show, man.
It's incredible. Really looking forward to that.
Nice
I'll be streaming Friday as well. And on Patreon this week, I'm doing something very different in Sudge's absence.
Okay.
The audiobook of Goodbye to the Lane, a diary I kept to Tottenham's 2016-17 season. That'll be 10 episodes across the next 5 days, of which the first one has probably already been released by the time we release this time.
That's a good idea. Oh, cool. Well, say hello to Ian. I'll definitely listen to that. And I didn't actually ask you, James, how Sky's go. That's been a lot better for me. I'm actually doing well this season in Sky. So no, less good on that. Okay.
500 and something.
Okay.
No, you're not winning that 50 grand this year. I said no, not
fair
babes.
enough.
We'll have to stay here. Like, what do you think 50 grand is going to get me these days? It's not going to get you a new house, love.
No, it's not a car full of petrol.
Yeah, baby, for a week.
All right, man. Cool. Well, that sounds good. I'll be listening as always, mate. So thanks for letting me host, and hopefully everyone's.
You're very welcome. Before you roll us out, Tom, although that is my bit anyway, let everyone know where they can follow you on the channels and whatnot.
Yeah, man. Get hold of me on Twitter at utterlytc. I'm always around if you want to have a conversation about FPL or Sky. I play both games, and it's been great to finally get on and hopefully do it again sometime.
Tom, you will always be welcome with us.
Cheers,
absolute gent. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers, pal.
For your time. I know you recited the intro. Do you know the outro?
Well, isn't it that don't you end it?
But he said something first, didn't he?
I don't know what Sudge says at this point. Is it stay safe?
Something like that. Yeah.
That's close enough.
Yeah, that'll do.
Stay safe, everybody.
What Tom's missing is ciao for now.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I should have remembered. Ciao for now.
Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.